I would like to talk a little bit about jewelry illustration. When we do a rendering of jewelry, we try and make it as precise, show all the detail, and we also show it by looking at the different views. You can take the three views, the top view, side view, and the other side view, and you can pretty much figure out all the dimensions that would go into creating a piece. So whenever something gets traded off from designer to craftsman, or when the designer is trying to sell an idea, very often you will see these drawings prepared. So we will be studying jewelry illustration because, one, we do not have our tools available to us in this time of isolation. But two, when tools are not available, that doesn't mean you cannot put together ideas. And so I really like to say and stress, well planned is well made. Very often, that is a standard. Well planned is well made. And so, and then also, if you can kind of visualize it, if you can make a plan, then you can, then basically you can make anything, and you can hopefully just put that aside, and someday you'll have a buyer for that. So at any rate, so the type of drawing that when you see a layout, there's a couple of things I want to point out. This view, it's a 3/4 view, and you see it in space in its dimensions, but you don't see it as the eye would see it. And so you can tell it is an orthographic drawing. Typically this section is a dead giveaway, but if you see that all of your lines are parallel, you know it's more of a mechanical rendering as opposed to seeing something from our eye when we would see a linear perspective applied. So that typically falls into 1 point, 2 point, and 3 point, which is kind of more of a visual art approach towards drawing. Okay, and all of this is really important, but typically in jewelry design, we tend to focus on orthographic drawings. Okay, so that said, our first assignment in our jewelry illustration is that we're going to just learn to make some base shapes and apply that orthographic view to it. Okay, so our goal is that we're going to be drawing 20 large shapes in orthographic view. It should fill the page. And then within that 20, we're going to make them all touching. They can either be stacked on top, stacked behind, but they're all going to be kind of layered into some composition on your paper. Okay, so this isn't actually jewelry per se, but we are practicing the application. We're practicing the doing the orthographic view. Okay, so our shapes are going to be layered and stacked on top or behind, and then I'm going to have you also make sure that you have 5, 6, about a third of them should have holes in them. Okay, so I did kind of a quick, whoops, that's something else, a quick kind of illustration, and so maybe yours will look something like this. I happen to shade in my background. You know, while I'm drawing my jewelry or my metal or my idea, I'm presenting it to be viewed as a finished piece. So very often, you know, people will take the time to kind of shade the different layers. If I put one value, one very kind of light value here, which is a shade, make that a little different than what is stacked on top, then you can kind of break up your planes pretty easily. You can kind of see the differences, okay? And then I've dropped in a background to kind of offset it from all the other planes also. Here I applied one of the orthographic views. You can see that I have one layer of metal showing right here, and then this piece of metal is stacked on top. And I've noted this hole, V-hole, kind of cut out right here. It really should be kind of a dashed line if it's not an true edge. Okay, so that said, that's what your finished product might look something like. Okay, so let me go over how I would like for you to approach these shapes, because we're going to be doing something that is called drawing from the wrist. Looking at a lot of your sketches, I think that you are kind of sweating the shapes, trying to make a shape, and I think the secret to doing it is, I think, drawing from the wrist. So let me talk about that. Now you could have a center line and kind of maybe try and make your shapes truly symmetrical. And if I were to do that, I would try and make each one of these quadrants as equal as possible. But for this exercise, we're not going to do that. We're going to be practicing drawing from the wrist. Okay, so here I go. I like doing the arched line. For one, when I work, if I were to cut that out, then it's nice and easy to file up. Okay, but you don't have to do that. All right, so I'm drawing from my wrist. Actually, right now I'm drawing from my elbow. That's where the movement is coming from. I'm not kind of trying to plot out that something like so, because what happens is that your edges probably tend to get a little wavy, and then you're always trying to correct that shape. And so learning to draw from your wrist, you get a much truer arc, and it looks nice. Okay, so here we are, drawing from the wrist. All right, here's another one. So within your 20 shapes, your composition of your shapes are going to be all connected. All connected. Now notice I'm just drawing my shapes right over each other. I'm not stopping and starting. And my line work is fairly light. Okay. Drawing from my wrist. And so forth. So you're going to work up 20 shapes, filling your paper. Okay. Now, when we get to orthographic, We want to see a little bit of that side. Okay, so, but we're not seeing it in kind of a real linear perspective. So saying that, if you're applying the orthographic view, you are going to just adopt an angle, right? You're going to bring it down a little tick mark. Now, the gauge that of metal we work in is 20 gauge. It's not very thick. So just a little tick mark will do. Okay, and there's that. So it's a little bit like when you make block letters. You know how you kind of take that off of every corner and bring it back, and you really don't kind of change that angle. Everything is parallel. Okay, so these block letters are in orthographic views. Okay, so here I am. I'm back to the drawing, and I'm taking down that little tick mark. Now, here, if I was doing the orthographic view here, I would not see that. It kind of gets blocked by the edge, so I won't worry about that. You're only putting the tick marks on where you see. I don't see it here. Oh, but I would see it here. Okay. Do I see it here? I see it about there. Yep, sure enough. All right. Right there, right there, right there, right there, right there. Here we go. I don't think I see it here. See it here. See it? No, that's kind of blocked from there. Okay, so then I'm going to just take my, kind of fill in my edges. If I have something like, I'm going to take some notches in this, and I'm going to put a notch in here. Okay. Tick mark, tick mark. It follows that edge. Tick mark follows that edge. Here it kind of disappears behind its own edge there. Okay. See it here. Don't see it there, so I'm going to take it here, and it's going to swoop. This edge here is going to follow that edge. Okay. All right. Oh, that can't be right, because if I see this edge, I don't see that edge. So I'm going to get rid of that. Okay. So as I define this drawing, later I can lightly get rid of what's kind of the underneath by erasing unwanted lines. Okay. Now, I want to do some of my cutouts. Now, we've talked about it in back when we were in our class, in some of our classes, right? If I'm doing a cutout, I'm not just going to do a shape, kind of slap it in there, right? Kind of want it to kind of follow some implied guidelines. Don't want to get too close to my edges, so I'm going to give myself some guidelines here. Again, real light. See how my pencil is just kind of barely being pulled on the surface? It's not real heavy. All right, so now I can cut in here. I'm using this guideline to give myself an even border. And I can leave it there. All right, so now I'm going to put in my tick marks. Don't see it there. See it there. See it there. See it there. hole in this one. All right, I think you all get it. So try and, you know, finish it out to a nice looking drawing if you can. It's going to be 20 large shapes with the orthographic view. They all must be touching in some way, stacked on top of each other or behind, and 5 or 6 of them should have holes cut out. Okay, let's see what you come up with.